consistently, yet the consciousness and activity built could not be sustained. Our experience in many areas of struggle continues to face this challenge. We need to build on our successes and find ways to look past the momentary ecstasy of a single demonstration or event that organisers are allied, and how to do what organisations are our allies, and how do we consolidate the policies and activism in campaigns to maintain these organisations' involvement, political support, and collective trust. We must record and continue to study our comrades' experiences in the movement in order to learn and improve our work. 2 years ago, the International Communist and Workers' Party celebrated the centenary of the Great October Revolution. Last year was 100 years since the foundation of the first Communist International. The Communist Party long commitment to internationalism and appreciation of the important contacts, cultural and political exchanges internationally have spread our commitment to work to build communist unity and a commitment to proletarian internationalism. So some of our first actions as a party were to support the Russian peoples, British miners, and Pan-Pacific regional union movements. At each stage in our history, these commitments have created and strongly reinforced our internationalist policies. The development in the international political movements and a self-critical study of events has led the party to a substantial advance in its communist thinking and theories, and have benchmarked our policies and actions to the wider communist collective. These contacts have also explained our appreciation, or expanded our appreciation, of the multicultural movement and our ability to express positive and constructive solidarity through a large number of migrants, temporary workers and refugees in Australia, including people who have escaped war and political repression. A tolerant, multicultural society cannot be built without first addressing the colonialist invasion and genocidal policies of Australia's capitalists towards our First Nation brothers and sisters. Although our party cannot claim it has a sole right to the heritage of the Communist Party, nor can we claim that many tens of thousands of dedicated, stalwart communists that have committed their lives over many years of activity, finance, inspirational work and actions to the cause of people's liberation. Our party has, however, held a consistent Marxist-Leninist position and always fought in the interest of the working class for scientific socialism. We can highlight some of our comrades who were veteran leaders of the party, such as Tom Paine and Jack McPhillips, who were members of the Communist Party from its establishment. Over the last week, contemporary recordings of these communists from 1985 and 1995 have been published, in which they talk extensively about the party and lessons of their activity. Jack was a legend of the union movement in Australia and was one of the leaders of the militant Ironworkers Union, a party union organiser and significant identity in the labour movement for more than 60 years. In 1995, he spoke at a conference organised to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Communist Party. His contribution provided an outstanding explanation of one of the most well-known industrial disputes in Australia's history, the 1949 coal miners' strike, during which he was jailed amongst several other communist unionist leaders. Jack started his contribution by saying that he could not understand why he needed to contradict the claims that this strike was a conspiracy by the communists to overthrow the Curtin Labor government. He said there was just no evidence that it was the intention of the union, the workers, or the Communist Party in the movement that had many more Labor Party members and supporters than supported the communists. He detailed the events surrounding the strike and that it was only part of a broader industrial campaign being undertaken by the ACTU. Jack also made the significant point that the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Lance Sharkey, opposed the strike, and as did the leadership of the party. Jack concluded by saying that the only conspiracy was that of the Labor government, who believed that by sending Australian troops into the mines to end the strike would show the public its anti-communist credentials, rid the unions of communist influence, and that these actions would win them the federal election. As Jack pointed out, however, that not only did the Labor Party lose the elections, it was thrown out of office for the next 20 years. He did say, however, that during this Cold War period of intense attacks and intimidation by both the Labor Party and Conservative parties, with outrageous accusation of betrayal, hysterical claims of spying for foreign powers, claims of espionage, and that the communists wanted to destabilise and overthrow the state, with purges in the public sector, intimidation across society, outrageous claims in the press and attacks of the groupers in the unions, had a profound effect on the party and its union activists, which resulted in a significant deterioration in party support in the union movement that continues till today. In Tom Paine's contribution to a Socialist Party event in 1985, he talked with great passion and clarity about being a party delegate to the 4th Communist Congress of the Communist International in 1922, at which he heard Lenin and Trotsky speak, and he also met Trotsky. Importantly, Tom spoke about the situation in Australia during World War I and the massive crowds, over 100,000 people that came out in Melbourne and Sydney during the campaigns against conscription, the conscription referendum. This was a highly political campaign against imperialist war and Australia's involvement. The impact of the war had a significant effect on post-war Australia. At the same time, the impact of the victory of the Russian Revolution sent waves of enthusiastic support and created a substantial interest in their revolutionary achievement. It inspired young activists who were already committed to socialism to move from the Socialist Party, the then Socialist Party, to a new party, the Communist Party, that wanted to do more than just talk about change. It embarked actively to make it happen. Also, I want to refer to a visit by Paul Robeson, a giant of the international solidarity, peace and civil rights movement, a brilliant actor, singer of renown who visited Australia in 1960. In a speech to a meeting of the CICD in Melbourne, was one of the most powerful expressions of support for peace, solidarity and socialism I have heard. Paul came here as part of a world tour after a long period when he was forbidden to travel by the US government because of his views and friendship with the Soviet peoples. During his speech, Paul spoke about his visits to the Soviet Union and how he and his family were warmly greeted and treated with friendship. One of the issues he took a particular interest in was that in the USSR, within 15 years of the revolution, the indigenous Soviet citizens were studying in universities, and that during World War II, the steel industry had to move from the Don to the indigenous areas to protect them from the fascist invasion. And it was the indigenous people that rebuilt the plants and ran the steel industry during the war. Paul said that when he returned to the United States, that some guy commented to him that the Africans and the American blacks, particularly from states like Mississippi, were so backwards that it would take 1,000 years under US democracy, the US democratic system, to catch up with the whites. When Paul talked about what happened in the Soviet Union, the guy responded, "Yeah, but that was under communism." Paul responded, "So the choice is, I have to wait 1,000 years for equality under US democracy, but under capitalism, I only have to wait 15 years. So what am I supposed to do?" We celebrate tonight, but some past members are only interested in recording past glory by compiling history of many dedicated individual communists. They seek the party's wonderful history and glorious victories, but reject and denounce communism. Yet without this name and the substance of what the party stood for, their efforts reek of opportunism and hollow rhetoric. They produce a book that they'll launch tonight to record the many magnificent and inspiring contributions. But how can it explain the truth without recognizing the party, Marxist-Leninist policies that motivated these efforts and action? This centenary is not just another event to come together and commemorate a knowable past. We must inspire a new generation of young communists who will be at the forefront of the struggle for change. Looking forward, not backwards, is where we need to be. But the Communist Party is not over. The struggle will continue. The 100th anniversary milestone reaffirms our commitment to the cause and inspires us to build our capacity to fight for a socialist future in Australia without exploitation or wars. We celebrate the commitment of tens of thousands of party comrades, hundreds of thousands of youth league members who have worked for the revolutionary cause. Over my 40 years in the movement, I have had the privilege of meeting and working with many communists and ex-communist veterans of the movement who still remain dedicated to continue the fight for a socialist future and encourage the broadest social participation. This celebration embraces our collective history of class struggle with its inevitable organisational and political successes and defeats. But the success of our United Front work will, with struggle and inspiration of workers, students, migrants, farmers, the LGBTI community, peace movements, anti-imperialist movements, even sporting and cultural organisations, has given us the understanding and appreciation of what it takes and what is required to become a revolutionary vanguard seeking to change Australia by the adoption of socialism. Reflecting on the past must help us to build the people's future. Long live proletarian internationalism. Long live the Communist International. Long live the Communist Party of Australia. Thank you, comrade.
Thank you, comrade Andrew, for your delivery. Very, very important to note what Comrade Andrew mentioned. Today, there are a lot of celebrations about this milestone of the working class. There are a lot of Zoom events. This conference was actually booked to be face-to-face at Sydney Trace Hall. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic that have changed our world, we weren't able to do it. One of the main concerns of the leadership of the party during the pandemic was how to keep the party alive and active, because many comrades have to dedicate part of the time working from home. Our collective, the Guardian Collective, they managed to put together the Guardian, literally with a small team that we have, everything from home, and the party had to stop the printing of the Guardian because also we had problems with the printer. You know, many shops have to close, send the workers home, and we may able to produce the paper on a PDF format, which was distributed by email. Most recently, the paper is back on hard copy, which puts the party every week in all cities where we got presence for people to find out what communists are all about. And I see that we got many comrades who have signed up in groups. I see here on the screen our comrades from the Maritime Branch. Well done. We've got Comrade Warren Smith there and other members of the Central Committee of our party with a nice decoration there with some of the important figures of the founding members of this party. We see comrades in Adelaide from the South Australian State Committee also joining us a group, and other comrades who have joined us in pairs or in small groups. Thank you. I have noticed in some people having difficulties joining up with the Zoom link, or they have forgotten misplaced, or for whatever reason they haven't been able to log in. But hopefully in the next few minutes, with the assistance, we will be able to get them in. For those who arrived late, welcome the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of Australia. Well, I see a lot of people joining us from the UK. We got Comrade Kat from Aotearoa, and we got comrades we have signed up from Geraldton, Western Australia, from Brisbane, from North Queensland, from Victoria, from South Australia, from Wollongong, from the Sydney district, and we got comrades from Canberra, as I mentioned, some of the comrade diplomats. And I hope I didn't miss anybody. I can see here. We got comrades even from Tasmania. So it is wonderful having you here joining us. Last night in Western Australia, we had a fantastic night of celebration. We have been very lucky with the pandemic here, and it looks like we're post-pandemic. Hopefully we don't have a second wave. But we did have the Black Swan Red Feathers Conference, where our comrade from the Central Committee, Christopher Crouch, Comrade Faisa from the Central Committee, and Comrade Aline put together this exhibition of the party history in WA. It was a good way to learn and to pay tribute for all those comrades we have worked very hard to put the communist views out there during the electoral campaigns for the environment. And as a surprise, the attendance was over the expectations that we had. And I'm happy to report that the red flag, the centenary flag, is flying atop Perth Trace Hall today for the weekend. The exhibition is open today, tomorrow, and on Sunday we're having a conference together with the Australian Society for the Study of Labour History in Perth. So, and there are some other activities that other people have put together, and we welcome the fact that we're celebrating. We pay tribute to all those who gave the time, the enthusiasm to found the party, to build the party. And it is a good time today, as this party is for today and the future, to get the new generations of communists that are joining us since probably about 3 to 5 years' time. We have experienced this new generation of communists, young people, very smart young people, that we continue the struggle for the time coming up. It hasn't been difficult to be a communist at probably at any time. It's the matter of trying to develop the class conscience and the necessity to have a working class party. That necessity is still today more relevant than ever. If we really want to save the planet and we want to save human beings as we know them today, we really need socialism. And the struggles us from tomorrow is how we're going to build socialism, how we're going to involve people, how we're going to work together in a united front with all sectors of society to get rid of capitalism. That is a big challenge. But I would like to introduce my co-host, Zach Dooney, who is assistant with all the IT requirements and also putting together the program. And he got a song prepared for us, and we'll read some of the greetings that we receive as well. Come, Zach.
Ciao, bella, ciao, bella, ciao, ciao, ciao. Stamattina mi sono alzato, io ho trovato l'invasor. Partigiano, portami via. Oh, bella, ciao, bella, ciao, bella, ciao, ciao, ciao. Partigiano, portami via, che mi sento di morir. Partigiano! partigiano. Oh bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Se io muoio da partigiano, tu mi devi seppellir.
Yes, Comrade. Thank you, Comrade Sack. And lovely cat you got there. That's beautiful. We're only humans and we love cats. Thank you. Well, comrades, I just got a message from the JBP and they sent also a message to our Centenary. I have already sent a message to Comrade Sack there. Hopefully we got an opportunity to read it. Having hit still from our comrade from Carolus, but will we continue, and when he joins, we're gonna get to hear the views. Now, I would like to introduce Comrade Warren Smith. The Maritime Union of Australia has been one of the unions with militant unions that have been under the pump from the Morrison government and all the conservatives and not so conservative governments in the country. Here in Western Australia, the MUI, we express our solidarity with Christy Kane, Secretary of the MUI-WI, in the struggle against privatization of the Fremantle port and against the automation where robots come and take our jobs. Workers must take control of automation. Industry 4.2 eventually will come, and we will need to take control of automation and put it in workers' hands. Otherwise, it will cost just jobs and make profit. So with this, I would like to introduce our Comrade Warren Smith, a member of the Secretariat of the Communist Party of Australia and an official from the Maritime Union. Comrade Warren, you're welcome.
Thank you, Comrade Vinnie. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay respects to their elders, past and present, recognising it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Thanks also to my comrades here from the Maritime Branch and for the organisation of this wonderful display that certainly does reflect some of the rich and vibrant history of the party and in the maritime industry. Comrades, trade union struggle has been a feature of Australian society since around the 1850s. And for the next 70 years, the theory and practice of different political ideas would be tested by the Australian working class. Social democracy in the form of the ALP, born of the failed 1890s strikes, was a recognition by the working class that state political power always resided with the ruling class and employers in struggle. Bitter defeats had taught working people the lessons of the capitalist-aligned state and the role it plays. From the 1890s, the ALP sought to capture state power for workers, but only ever electorally. Social democracy failed, and still fails, to understand the partisan class role of state power under capitalism. Electoral outcomes in Australia have never thwarted the ruling class or stopped the capitalist class wielding their power or control for 1 minute in Australian history. The radical working class also tested anarcho-syndicalism through the IWW. Both pre-Marxist political strategies and theories failed to advance the Australian working class from the 1890s through to the early 20th century. The Communist Party of Australia was born 100 years ago on October 1920. In fact, less than 100 metres from where we all sit now. From its first days, the party attached special significance to the role of the trade unions as the main mass organisations of the working class in Australia. And this has been reflected in the participation of CPA members in their respective trade unions and the attention played by party organisations at all levels to questions of trade union activity and organisation throughout the party's history. From as early as December 1920, the newly formed CPA stated, "We hold it as a fundamental principle that it is only by the mass movement of the working class as a whole that our emancipation can be won. We communists contend that if workers are well organised for the express purpose of the overthrow of the capitalist system, they can do so during one of these periodical crises of capitalism." The necessity to raise the level from the economic struggle to that of political consciousness has remained a cornerstone of the thinking and activity of members of the Communist Party throughout the party's existence. Lance Sharkey, CPA General Secretary from 1948 to 1965, wrote in detail on the trade unions and what communist trade union work looks like in his 1942 publication, The Trade Unions, Communist Theory and Practice of Trade Unionism. The United Front, the most successful of communist strategies in the trade unions, was outlined by Sharkey in this work, where he described the trade unions as vital centres for building of the united front of the working class. Communist leadership within the trade unions has almost exclusively arisen from an application of united front policies and practice. Sharkey also outlined the clear preference of communists towards industrial unions as opposed to craft unions. The party saw industrial unionism as a higher form of industrial organisation and placed great emphasis on the organisation of job or shop committees, of workers as part of a structure of the union. This continues to be party policy today. From the CPA's humble beginnings in the Sussex Street, Sydney in 1920 sprang thousands of communist trade unionists across Australia over the next 100 years. The CPA went on to see many communists gain leading positions within the Australian trade union movement. By the 1950s, many industries become under strong communist leaderships, including the waterfront, seafarers, mining, construction workers, railways and ironworkers, among many others. All of these communist leaderships would be tested to the extreme in the Cold War 50s with the advent of the right-wing industrial groups who were openly hostile to socialism and the party. These communist leaderships within the trade unions objectively lifted the standard of living of the Australian working class. Communist leaders have never been afraid of using the organised collective power of workers to leverage employers and governments for better outcomes. It was these better outcomes for workers that saw increasing communist officials elected consistently despite the ongoing electoral difficulties facing the party in broader elections across the three tiers of Australian government. One of the keys to success was the application of United Front policies, with progressive ALP members in particular. Communist trade unionists work on the basis of these principles today. The economic successes were, of course, not enough. The task of communists in the unions is to bring political questions to the fore and seek to reach beyond a purely economic outlook. There is a need to show the problems faced by the working class are not related to a bad boss, but are related to a profit-driven system of exploitation and wage slavery. Accordingly, the main task of communists in the trade union movement has been to raise the political and class consciousness around a revolutionary objective, as well as to undertake practical organisational work. Throughout the 1960s, the communist movement was impacted by a number of splits. These splits often found themselves playing out within the trade union movement as well as in the party. The consequences of the splits led to a splintering of communists working within the trade unions. There are many lessons for the working class in this period. The unity of communists in developing broader class unity is essential, and much work has been done over subsequent decades to seek to rectify those divisions to ensure left unity as a basic building block in developing other and more broader forms of unity. There is still much work to be done in this area. The disastrous class collaborationist policies of the 1980s ALP-ACTU Accord period started a decline in the trade union movement that is yet to be arrested and will not be arrested by further policies of class collaboration. The party continues to this day to strongly support the trade unions. Our support is not uncritical, nor is our work performed within islands of ideological purity. We get involved. We test our ideas in practice amongst the working class, and we advocate for strong class struggle positions while working to maintain the unity of the workers. We emphasise ideological questions and bring class to the fore. We advocate socialism as an alternative system to capitalism that can resolve the most severe contradictions within society. We link the various struggles of capitalism and present their connections, as well as our obligations to act on the basis of that class view and build unity across all working people who suffer from the problems that arise from capitalism and its profit motive. 100 years of communist activity in unions has delivered this approach within the trade union movement. The class view is not a dominant view in the union movement yet, but it is certainly not an unknown approach, with even entrenched social democratic forces holding high the legends of the communist movement and their contributions to building the movement for change and fighting for a socialist future. Many great communist trade union leaders have set a high standard for all future trade unionists. The unions they led were irrevocably altered by the participation of communists who left a strong ideological legacy in many of these unions that still adopt a strong socialist objective today. Currently, workers and their unions are facing massive challenges. There has never been more targeted anti-union laws or institutions in Australian history. Some of those oppressive institutions, and the Australian Building and Construction Commission, for example, evokes images of fascistic control and extreme levels of state power intervening into the class struggle on the side of the bosses. Workers and unions have much to struggle for in the modern day, and the CPA will stand by workers and unions always. and actively proclaim that we are on the same side, the side of the working class. The historic role of communists in the trade union movement is a history of excellence, and it is up to us now to live up to and exceed that wonderful past legacy of class struggle in the march ever forward to a socialist world free from war, poverty, and exploitation. We remain not only dedicated to this task, but confident the working class can win. Long live Marxism-Leninism, long live internationalism, and long live the Communist Party of Australia.
Long live, Comrade Warren, thank you for that report. Very important comments, how in the last 40 years, really the face of our society has changed by policies from governments of all perspectives. One of the characteristics of the new party leadership is that we all are trade unionists, officials, full-time workers. So we do this party work for love, for commitment, for class conscience. In the construction industry, where I work, workers are penalized individually. Union officials are threatened with jail terms if they refuse to talk to the ABCC, for example, fined for doing the jobs. And in particular, when in an industry so dangerous like construction, workers have to take firm positions and actions to protect themselves. We go to work not to get injured or killed. In Western Australia, on the 13th of October, unfortunately, we had a fatality in one of the building sites. We lost a very young, talented young worker, 23-year-old. We got one worker in hospital and the other one got discharged. Under pressure from workers taken to the streets, the upper house passed the industrial manslaughter legislation, where it had been installed by the coalition government for quite some time. But parliaments won't fix the problems for workers. People power will. And that is our commitment as communists. Organized, organized, and organized. I would like to ask Comrade Sack to present a couple of video messages that we have received from the Communist Party of the United States and from the Communist Party of Cuba. So Comrade Sack is ready to play those videos. Please go ahead, Comrade Sack.
On the National Committee, and I'm also on the International Department of the Communist Party USA. And I'd like to send greetings to you, our Australian comrades, on your 100th anniversary. I'd also like to include in that congratulations the co-chairs, both Rosanna and Joe of the Communist Party USA. Y'all have a glorious history. I know part of it was spent underground and part of it above ground, but you've always fought for the working class, and you've also always fought for international solidarity. I'd also like to thank y'all for the Australian comrade in our party named Harry Bridges, who headed up the Longshoremen's Union for decades. He was a great Marxist-Leninist, and he kept us organized in the working class in the Longshoremen's Union for years, even when under vicious attack by red baiters and haters. So again, comrades, happy 100th anniversary from the Communist Party USA, from right here in Houston, Texas, where we're fighting the same fight as you. Thank you, comrades. Congratulations.
Comrades, we can't hear it.
Sorry, comrades, I'm going to do this a different way. I'm talking to the stream now currently. There's two outputs. Now, I apologize to this screen and, oh gosh, managing too many things. Okay.
You did a message, comrade.
Yeah, I'm going to play the video message from Cuba. All right, here we go. Okay, here it is. Thank you for your patience.
Queridas compañeras y compañeros, en nombre del Departamento de Relaciones Internacionales del Comité Central del Partido Comunista de Cuba, expresamos nuestras más sinceras felicitaciones al Partido Comunista de Australia en ocasión del centenario de su fundación. Reconocemos los esfuerzos que han tenido que realizar en todos estos años para mantener su activismo en el escenario político australiano. Vivimos tiempos de mucha incertidumbre internacional. La pandemia de la COVID-19 ha cambiado la vida del planeta, lamentando el fallecimiento de casi 1 millón de personas y enfrentando una prolongada crisis económica internacional cuyas mayores consecuencias recaen en los amplios sectores populares desfavorecidos por las políticas neoliberales del capitalismo. Cuba, bajo la conducción del partido, el gobierno y con la participación activa y consciente de todo nuestro pueblo, ha realizado ingentes esfuerzos para mantener bajo control la epidemia, brindando atención a todos sus ciudadanos. En estas difíciles condiciones se ha recrudecido como nunca antes la criminal política de bloqueo económico, financiero y comercial del gobierno de los Estados Unidos. Por primera vez, el monto total de las afectaciones ocasionadas por el bloqueo en un año rebasa los $5.000 millones. Nadie puede negar el impacto del bloqueo y de las numerosas regulaciones, sanciones y disposiciones emitidas por la administración de Trump en la vida cotidiana de cubanas y cubanos. A pesar de ello, Cuba no ha dejado de brindar la cooperación médica solidaria a muchos pueblos del mundo, apoyando la lucha contra la COVID-19 y salvando miles de vidas, que le ha valido el reconocimiento de los pueblos, aceptando una derrota a la pérfida campaña del gobierno norteamericano para intentar desacreditar la colaboración internacionalista de Cuba. Agradecemos profundamente las expresiones del Partido Comunista de Australia de respaldo a la nominación de la Brigada Médica Henry Reed al Premio Nobel de la Paz 2021. Nuestro partido siente inmensa gratitud por las sinceras muestras de solidaridad de los comunistas australianos, quienes se han mantenido firmes en apoyo a la soberanía e independencia de nuestro país. Esa leal postura ha contribuido a borrar las distancias físicas entre nuestros pueblos y a cultivar relaciones de respeto y afecto entre ambos partidos. Llegue a todos los militantes y simpatizantes del Partido Comunista de Australia en esta especial ocasión nuestro abrazo fraterno. Hasta la victoria, siempre.
Thank you, comrades. That was an amazing message by Juan Carlos Marzán, who is the Vice Secretary of the Central Committee's International Department of the Communist Party of Cuba. Thank you for that message. They also sent the written version, which is going to be published in our paper. And comrades, we got our comrade Kat from the new Communist Party of Aotearoa, who we would like to invite to join us. I think that I saw him somewhere there. Comrade Kat, if you're there, please join us. We have been working with the NCPA. We have attended the Foundational Congress. We had invited them to address our Central Committee, and they have done a fantastic job getting organized a Communist Party straight from scratch. So our message of solidarity to the NCPA, and we would like to welcome Comrade Kat.
Thank you, comrade. It is nice to be here today, sadly as the second communist cat. I didn't expect that, but it is a great privilege to be here on behalf of the Communist Party of Aotearoa, celebrating the centenary of the Communist Party of Australia with our comrades across the Tasman. 100 years is a big milestone for any organisation, let alone a communist party. As the foundation of the Communist International, the event which prompted the establishment of these separate Marxist-Leninist communist parties, only occurred 101 years ago. Tomorrow, October 31st, Halloween, is known for spectres and ghosts. But today, in 1920, just as today in 2020, we celebrate a different spectre. This is, of course, the spectre of communism that was described by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in their manifesto of the Communist Party. This spectre, of course, is not an actual ghost, but a fighting body of many working people. It's a force for strong unions, for peace, for democracy, for equality of nations, and of course, for socialism in the Commonwealth of Australia, just as it is in Aotearoa, New Zealand, in Vietnam, in China, and in many other nations all around the globe. All Australian comrades should be immensely proud to be here today, because the class struggle has certainly been a struggle. Not many political parties have faced such concerted action and efforts by the government and monopoly capitalists to ban their party and make them forcibly cease activity. Certainly none others that I can think of here in this part of the world. Yet the Communist Party of Australia survived Menzies. It also survived other opponents from within the communist movement itself. These are such as the Aarons brothers back in the 1960s, who attempted to remove Marxism-Leninism and its adherents from Australia, just like Menzies, but in a far more duplicitous and secretive way. It was thanks to the leadership of Comrade Peter Simon and indeed all SPA members, because I think all comrades must be leaders in their own right, that the Australian communist movement was able to withstand this and grow, despite the endless calls of both the Aarons brothers and then those who, after the fall of the Soviet Union, decried the Communist Party and scientific socialism as dead and buried, with no need to try again. To speak honestly, we here in New Zealand know the drastic consequences of these false ideologues and what it happens to not just the Communist Party, but to the workers' movement and the left as a whole when the Communist Party and Marxism is negated. The New Zealand and Australian communist movements and parties have long been firm friends and comrades. The Communist Party of New Zealand was founded roughly 6 months after the Communist Party of Australia. It was founded during Easter weekend in 1921. As they discussed forming a party of the new type here in the land of the long white cloud, out of the Socialist Party, the Labour Party, and other groups, a copy of the Constitution and the program of the Communist Party of Australia was read by every delegate as a guide to what we should be doing here in New Zealand. Australian communists such as Harry Quaife were key advisors in guiding the young Kiwi Party to political maturity and action. Almost a century later, the Communist Party of Australia played a great role as supporters of us personally, as New Zealand communists, to refound and re-establish our own Communist Party. I spent 2 months in Sydney during 2018, and I met many people on the Zoom call there. And on the very first night in Sydney, I attended a meeting of the youth of the Central Branch in Sydney, and for the first time realised the power and significance of an organised Leninist party. Those 2 months were life-changing for me, and I received the advice and the encouragement of many Australian comrades by the rank and file and in the leadership of the CPA for the founding of the Communist Party of Aotearoa. 2.5 years later, and I'm so incredibly proud to not just be here congratulating Australian comrades on their centenary, which I would have done regardless, but to be here as a representative of the now established and growing Communist Party of Aotearoa. Monopoly capitalism in the 21st century sees many monopoly corporations and banks operating in New Zealand that are actually headquartered and controlled from Australian shores. Banks have actually faced regulatory difficulties because of this, despite the fact that New Zealand decided not to join the Commonwealth under Premier 7 over a century ago. The history of our two countries and the social history, the struggles of the working people of our two countries, which of course is most important, remains inextricably linked across the Tasman. It is the hope of the Communist Party of Aotearoa that as both our parties continue to strengthen our positions domestically and the links to the working class and working people within our own countries, we also deepen our cooperation and joint action against monopoly capitalism in defence of working people across the Tasman. The joint statement of our two parties earlier in the year on measures against the COVID-19 pandemic was, I think, an excellent early example of this potential for cooperation. It is a shame that due to the same COVID-19 pandemic, myself and other comrades could not cross the Tasman to celebrate the centenary with you in person, like how you yourselves could not celebrate in person. We celebrate the centenary of the CPNZ here in Wellington next Easter weekend, and hopefully, if the situation improves in Australia, because not to brag, we have 0 cases here in New Zealand, as many of you as possible will be able to visit Aotearoa and celebrate the centenary of both Communist parties together. Dear comrades, receive the best wishes of both myself personally and the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Aotearoa on this centenary. Long live our Communist parties, long live Trans-Tasman friendship, long live socialism. Te waka noa. Thank you.
Long live. Thank you, Comrade Kat, and long live our relationship across the Tasman. Internationalism has been an important feature of our party. We fought against apartheid. The MUI comrades play an important role. Our relationship with Cuba has been fundamental as a blockaded country. Most recently, we defend the Bolivarian Revolution of Venezuela, and we do whatever we can to defend those two countries and those two fraternal societies and parties that have been developing socialism. It is important to note that we also campaigned for the decolonization in Indonesia. And last night, when we had our event in Perth, somebody gave me I don't know if you can see, a postcard. And they said that in the Jakarta method, see how communists haven't been welcome everywhere. And in many countries, communists are killed, even today. And we all remember the 1 million communists killed in Indonesia. And they extracted this paragraph. First, we kill all the subversives. Then we kill all the collaborators. Then those who sympathize with the subversives. Then we kill those who remain indifferent. And finally, we kill the timid. That was from the Jakarta Method, Public Affairs 2020. It was recently published. And someone gave me this yesterday, a part of our celebrations, to remind us that internationalism is very important to protect the movement, to build, but also that we have a responsibility of proletarian internationalism with our comrades. I think that we might have a comrade from Indonesia joining us today. But I would like to find out if Comrade Carlos Wema has been able to log in. If Comrade Carlos, if you're in, can you please indicate? Because I can't see you there. So I don't know if you're there, but if you do, please indicate that you have been able to log in. I would like to ask Comrade Sack to read the message from the Communist Party of Vietnam. If you got it there, Comrade Sack.
Thank you. So from the Communist Party of Vietnam. Dear comrades, on the auspicious 100th anniversary of the Communist Party of Australia, the Communist Party of Vietnam would like to extend to all members of the Communist Party of Australia our warmest fraternal greetings. Over the past 100 years, the Communist Party of Australia has been persistent in its ideology, promoting solidarity in the labour movement, championing the legitimate rights of workers, women, migrants and Aborigines, and making important contributions to protecting social justice and environment in Australia. We firmly believe that the Communist Party of Australia, inheriting its 100 years of glorious tradition and courageous experience, will successfully implement the party's guidelines and programs, make active contributions to the common struggle of the peoples in the world for peace, democracy, justice, and social progress. May the fine traditional friendship between our two parties and our two peoples further grow vigorously. With the revolutionary greetings, Hoang Binh Quan, member of the Central Committee, Chairman of the Commission for External Relations, Communist Party of Vietnam.
Thank you, Comrade Sack. We have been recruiting new members, particularly young people with a lot of skills, well, better skills than mine, I might say, particularly in IT, graphic designing, and in general, very smart people. We asked them to put together a video of some of the party activity in the last 100 years. And I would like to invite you, I would like to acknowledge Comrade Alexei for that fantastic work. I watch it, I enjoy it, and I'm sure that everybody will like it this evening when we officially launch this video. If the video is ready there, Comrade Sack, can we play it?
Yeah, sure. My apologies to the viewers of the stream. You are not going to see this video. I'm very sorry about that. But for us in here, we will see it. That's okay. But yeah, apologies to the viewers of the stream.
International
We came away with an arrangement. Well, then on the 1st of May 1946, we had to wait till the war was over, then they'd all come out on strike, and they'd stay on strike until they got the conditions they wanted.
Mark's House, Sydney headquarters of the Australian Communist Party, scene of a dramatic raid by officers of the Commonwealth Investigation Service. Workers in the 5-story building are taken by surprise as 24 Commonwealth police begin the raid, which is authorised by the Attorney General Dr. Evert.
The police raid on the Sydney headquarters of the Communist Party aimed to find stashes of cash. The police failed to find any money, but took the opportunity to remove huge quantities of Communist Party documents.
The long arm of the law reaches into the Communist headquarters and may unearth sensational discoveries.
Well, hey-ho, you landlubbers, here's a tale of a ship of shame. A leaky tub that's manned by slaves, and the bucket of rust is her name. Bucket of rust is her name. The flag of convenience, she flies the Jolly Roger of today, with laundered money, contraband, and drugs, and a crew that gets no pay. Crew that gets no pay. Bucket of rust is a grimy old heap, it's a wonder she can float. And if she sinks, you can't escape, you can't launch the safety boat. Launch the safety boat. Hey, your rhinos are full of slime and scum, but what's even worse than that is the rancid food in the galley must be shared with the roach and rat. Gotta share it with the roach and the rat. Well, a bucket of rust is a great success. She's welcome in our ports. She undercuts our local ships with her cheapness and her rods. Cheapness and her rods. Deregulated industry is her blood, her lifeline. You can be substandard and be a sweatshop, and the government don't mind. No, the government don't mind. Sad to say, the bucket of rust, could this have been God's will? On the Great Barrier Reef she ran aground with 2 crew members killed. 2 crew members killed. And it took them 12 days to blast her away and free her from the reef. And all through the time, the oil she spilled, it brought the sea to grief. You know, it brought the sea to grief. It's hard to believe, but this story ends well for this great heap of shit. Minister for Transport saved the day when he issued a new permit. John Anderson is his name. It's a true story.
You can bruise my pride and bust my face, scatter my rights all over the place, and take the bread from off my plate, but you can't break me. Lock me out, chain the gates, put black shirts in with dogs and mace. I'll hold the line, won't step away, 'cause you can't break me. I belong, you belong, we belong to the Union. Don't count me out when I'm on the floor. We'll win again, we've won before. The streets will ring with a mighty roar, 'cause you can't break me. Stocks rise up on workers' backs, profits soar while you hand out the sack. Boardroom bullies bloated and fat, but you can't break me. Australia's sold to mates offshore, backroom deals and shonky law. This day has come, we say no more. You can't break me. I belong, you belong, we belong to the Union. I belong, you belong, we belong to the Union. We won't turn away if you dare us to fight. I swear I'll never lay down and die. I'm in the Union, mate.
Carlos, for your words. And yes, sometimes technology works, sometimes it doesn't, but the power.
Sorry about it.
Oh, that's all right. The power of internationalism and the new technologies, we're able to have you here with us. We appreciate it, and we thank you, and you can count with our solidarity as well as Communist Party. All the very best.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye. Thank you, comrades. Well, we managed to get our comrade Carlos there, International Secretary of the Communist Party of Venezuela. Once when I was invited to participate in one of the events by the Bolivarian embassy in Canberra, I had the opportunity to visit the office of the Communist Party of Venezuela and see the conditions of the comrades, how they developed and how they do their work. So we thank them for the opportunity to join us. And I think that in Venezuela it's about 5:40 in the morning. So thanks to Comrade Carlos. Comrades, the last bit of the video was cut off. We might have some opportunity later on in the after party opportunity to watch it again and to watch the last section. But there we saw Comrade Peter Simon. Peter Simon served the party for a very long time. And since the formation of the Socialist Party of Australia in 1971 until his death in 2008, he entirely dedicated that part of his life to the Communist Party of Australia and under his political guidance. After his passing, the party made a historical decision. The Central Committee elected the first female General Secretary in our party, Dr. Hannah Milton. Comrade Hannah was the party president at the time, and in February 2009, she got elected as General Secretary, and I had the opportunity to be elected as the party president. And obviously I had a big shoes to fill in with that task. But in all positions, we all grow, we all learn, and that is characteristic of communists. We learn from our mistakes, and we always evaluate our work. We can't consider ourselves perfect, because then we will stop to be humans. Che Guevara always said that revolutionaries are people moved by great feelings of love and passion. So that's what we are, people with great feelings of love and passion. I would like to invite Dr. Hannah Milton to talk to us about how saving the humanity, environment, war, and the need for socialism. Comrade Hannah, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Vinny. Comrades and friends, Greetings to everyone on this wonderful conference, to all party members and sympathisers on this occasion, which is so important and quite unique. I'd like to start by acknowledging that I am speaking from the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that this is Aboriginal land, always was, always will be. I would also like to acknowledge the generations of comrades across the last 100 years, those who have given so much, have sacrificed so much, have achieved so much for the working class in Australia, for the Aboriginal people, migrants, women, and others in our society, in the struggle for peace, as well as offering international solidarity. May they never be forgotten and always be honoured. Comrades, we face at this moment of our centenary unprecedented threats to the future of humanity. One danger is the environmental crisis. The other is the destructive power of nuclear weapons. If more than a tiny fraction of the global nuclear weapon stockpiles were used, the effects would be catastrophic for humanity's survival. But let's start with a bit of good news. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or what's also called the Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty, was adopted at the United Nations on the 7th of July 2017. It will enter into force on the 22nd of January 2021. First, a moment of history. Communists over the whole world have always been consistent fighters for peace with justice. We're not pacifists, but we are passionate campaigners for peace. Frédéric Joliot-Curie was a French communist and a Nobel Peace Prize winner who began the Stockholm Peace Appeal, which was launched by the World Peace Council in March 1950. The appeal demanded the outlawing of nuclear weapons. The total signatures reached were over 273 million. 70 years later, humanity has won the Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty, which makes the development, testing, production, stockpiling, stationing, transfer, use and threat of use of nuclear weapons illegal for the countries that have signed the treaty. A great majority of the world's nations support the treaty, except for the nuclear weapons states and a few of their allies. But treaties create norms which become influential over time. Treaties influence the behavior of states, even those who have not signed on. In Australia, 4 in 5 of our people want the government to sign the treaty. Yet the Australian government refuses to sign and continues to assist the command, control, and targeting of US nuclear weapons through the US bases in our country, like Pine Gap. There are many peace campaigns which we as communists are committed to, opposing the astronomical waste of spending on the military, arms sales, drone warfare, solidarity with the people of Palestine and Yemen, and much, much more. But if we are to build a new world over the next 100 years, we have two priority tasks. We have to fight for and win a new Australian government which will sign and ratify the nuclear ban treaty and which will close the United States military bases on our soil. I want to look now at the question of the environmental crisis. Comrades, this is a battle for our very lives. We are in a planetary emergency. Vast areas of the planet, including many densely populated coastal areas, will become uninhabitable. Hundreds of millions of people will be displaced. Entire cities and countries will collapse. Human civilization may not survive. The current 1.2 degrees Celsius of warming is already dangerous. 2 degrees would be extremely dangerous. 3 degrees would be catastrophic. 4 degrees would be unlivable for most people around the world. And climate change is only one aspect of this problem. Everywhere, natural systems that maintain our planet are deteriorating. In the past 50 years of capitalism, 60% of the world's mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians have been killed off. 1 million plant and animal species are under threat of extinction. Half the world's coral reefs and half the world's tropical forests have been destroyed. Capitalism has polluted our oceans, caused droughts, heat waves, desertification, fires, flooding, storms, and water and food shortages. The fires that ravaged our country are an example of the destruction we face if we do not rapidly change course. Australia must achieve drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions in a very short timescale. If Cuba can achieve a 40% cut in emissions in 3 years, then a similar effort can work in Australia if our people act to force the pace of change. Capitalism has been called a war against the earth. There can be no green capitalism. Sustainable development under capitalism is an impossibility. For the capitalists, every crisis is an opportunity to make a profit, to cut costs, to expand. Capitalism has created the environmental crisis. It cannot solve it. It has failed both people and our planet. Australia's leaders have done everything possible to prevent the adoption of serious climate change policy for our country and to protect the fossil fuel industry. In the face of the looming disaster, the recent federal budget gave more funding for coal power and $52 million for gas. The end of civilization due to climate construction is close, but it is not yet inevitable. But it will happen unless urgent global action is taken to achieve fundamental change. Humanity can opt for preservation of capitalism or preservation of life and the environment. 172 years ago, Marx and Engels wrote in the Communist Manifesto, "Oppressor and oppressed stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on an uninterrupted, now hidden, now open fight. A fight that each time ended either in a revolutionary constitution of society at large or in the common ruin of the contending classes. There is a new movement to save the planet. It's growing in numbers and strength around the world. So slogans for system change and signs that denounce capitalism are increasingly popular. In Australia, surveys have shown a slow but steady rise in anti-capitalism sentiments, hostility to big business, suspicion of the traditional political parties, and concern for the environment. The new movement is broad and complex, but is moving in the direction of revolution against capitalism. Communists are playing a part in it, but we must do much more. We must play our leading role in it. This new movement must be prepared for huge political and economic struggles. We face a ruling class out of its mind for profits and power. We face powerful institutions and corporate power. The task ahead is monumental. Disaster is certainly possible. If we fight, we may lose. If we don't fight, we will definitely lose, and humanity will lose its future. There will not be another 100 years. We must, in less than 30 years, transform this country of ours. We must build a planned economy which can eliminate the private profit motive. We must have socialist production which aims to satisfy human needs, not to overproduce commodities, many of which have little relevance to human needs. Comrades, in times of crisis, impossible ideas can become possible. The corona crisis can be a catalyst for the kind of transformative change that can curb the worst effects of the environmental crisis. Arundhati Roy, that wonderful Indian writer and human rights activist, wrote this: historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly, with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. Comrades, on this centenary, we must confront the reality that what we do now will alter the course of humanity and all life on Earth. Every one of us communists must play a constant, active, effective role in this epic struggles. Our actions in the Communist Party of Australia, with millions of others, must be truly historical in their sweep and consequences, or we will lose the next 100 years. We will lose the future. As we celebrate the achievements of communists over the last 100 years and look forward with hope and revolutionary confidence to the next 100 years, our challenge, comrades, is to urgently build a movement powerful enough to overthrow capitalism and begin the task of building socialism. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Hannah, for those thoughtful messages and the tasks that we got ahead. Obviously, the Morrison government left people behind, and we have a lot of missed opportunities with the recent budget that we put forward to the people. Here in Perth, for example, near the Law Street Bridge, the homeless people set up a tent city. More than 8,000 homeless people. It is really shameful in such a wealthy country and a wealthy state that we have. The system is unable to provide for the people the public housing that it is required. It was a missed opportunity, the home builder scheme, that has created a race to the bottom in the construction and the housing, with prices gone out of the reach of people that we end indebted for building a home. The home should be a right, not a luxury. And we got enough wealth, we got enough billions of dollars to invest in public housing. But the coalition government has chosen instead other priorities, tax cuts for the rich, for the multinational corporations. It's not enough that we give our national resources for free. But now we also give a tax cut. We need that resources to be invested for the well-being of our people. We need to nationalize our national resources. We need to stop spending taxpayers' money in the military. Our military budget is humongous for the necessities of the people. $1 trillion to be spent in the next 10 years. We don't need more aircraft. We need hospitals. We need full-time jobs for our nurses, our doctors. The situation that we live in Victoria, for example, and in other parts of Australia during the pandemic, where our health professionals, they have access to PPE, they were forced to work from job to job, from aged care facility to aged care facility, because they were employed precariously through agencies or labor hire. It's not what the Australian people deserved. And that is another responsibility for us in the party, to put pressure to change this society that has failed the people. Other countries have done better than us in the environment, in other sense. In the UK, even we was reported that Prime Minister Boris Johnson called our Prime Minister here, asking to do more for the environment. We're relying on gas. But we still paid a very expensive price for our gas because we have destroyed our manufacturing sector, our industry, so we have to send our resources to be manufactured elsewhere and buying back. I noted that our Comrade General Secretary, Rob Griffith from the Communist Party of Britain, has logged in. And I would like to invite Comrade Rob to give us a greeting and a report of what's happening in the UK. So Comrade Rob, you're most welcome. Thank you for joining us live.
Thank you, dear comrades. Is this, can you hear me? Yes. The Communists of Britain salute you on your party's centenary. The bonds between our two parties go back to the foundation of both in 1920. Those between the working class movements of Britain and Australia go back even further. Leaders of the Merthyr Rising of 1831 and the Chartist Rising in Newport in 1839 were transported to Australia for life. During the Great Dock Strike of 1889 in London, the stevedores of Australia sent £3,000 in solidarity, a fortune back in those days. One of the leaders of that strike, Tom Mann, later spent 8 years in your country, helping to build your militant trade union movement. He returned in time to be a founding member of the Communist Party in Britain, and then organised the Pacific Bureau of the Red International of Labour Unions, which included Australia. When he died in 1941, the red flag was flown over Melbourne City Hall. The last speeches of our party's most celebrated General Secretary, Harry Pollitt, were delivered in your country in 1960. He died on the ship back to Britain. Comrades, the red flag still flies in Australia and Britain today. But the whole international communist movement now faces enormous challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic and the mortal dangers of global warming, both with their roots in the metabolic rift that Marx identified in capitalism's reckless violation of the natural world. The new Cold War against China and imperialism's threats to peace in other parts of the world, and the scourge of capitalism in its neoliberal phase, which to an unprecedented extent empowers money at the expense of jobs, living standards, and human society. That's why our Marxist-Leninist commitment to socialist revolution must be stronger than ever. Yes, in Britain, we are going through a series of prolonged crises over a range of different issues. And you will have heard, no doubt, the latest news that the socialist leader, ex-leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, has now been suspended from that party on the flimsiest of pretexts. Make no mistake about it, comrades, the prospect of a left-led Labour government on the most radical election manifesto since the early 1980s really shocked and frightened the ruling class in Britain after the gains that he and his party had made in our general election in 2017. Everything was done in one of the most scurrilous, dishonest campaigns in British political history to ensure that he would not lead Labour to victory in December of last year. And in those efforts by the ruling class in Britain, of course, they received critical support from inside the Labour Party itself, not least from now its current leader, Keir Starmer. So our party is seeking to unite and mobilise the left in Britain to reverse that decision and to continue the left-right struggle within the Labour movement in Britain, which of course finds its reflection in a very important way in the left-right struggle in the Labour Party. Comrades, we face enormous challenges. Many of them are the same challenges that you face and that the international communist movement faces and that humanity as a whole face. Comrades, so long live the Communist Party of Australia, long live the Communist Party of Britain, long live communism. Socialism will win. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Rob. Last year, Comrade Andrew, Evan, and myself had the opportunity to meet with your delegation in Turkey, in Izmir, during the meeting of the Communist and Workers' Parties. And it was a good exchange, and we are pleased that we continue to develop our fraternal relations. And you're right, we will win. Socialism is the only alternative for this capitalism rapacious in which we live. Thank you for the opportunity, Comrade. And comrades, I would like to welcome Comrade Surya. I noticed that he just joined, and well, thank you, Comrade, for that effort as well, joining from Indonesia. And I know about your work in the maritime industry. If you'd like to say a few words, you're welcome.
Hey, comrades. First of all, I would like to thank you to CPA for having me today. I'm Surya, the Deputy President of SPGICT Trade Union, representing dockers at the biggest port in Indonesia. We are embracing CPA 100th anniversary event with the proud respect and a lot of warmth. We would like to pledge our commitment as well to build international solidarity and united workers against exploitation. And as one of the oldest militant and progressive party, we recognize that CPA is now taking place against the challenge that happened in the world now. We know this is very powerful and important struggle. And the political situation in the world is not okay, as well as in Indonesia. So again, I want to thank you for having me in this great event. So long life international solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Surya. Long live international solidarity. Thanks for that. And comrades, we have also very close relationships with the Communist Party of Canada. And Comrade Liz Raleigh sent us a greeting, which we asked Comrade Elizabeth, a member of our Central Committee, to read. Just need an indication, and Comrade Elizabeth is ready to read the message from Canada. Thank you, Comrade Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Thank you, comrades. I'm really happy to share this greeting from the Communist Party of Canada. Starts, congratulations on the CPA's 100th birthday. Dear comrades, on behalf of the Central Committee and members of the Communist Party of Canada, please accept our warmest greetings and congratulations on the auspicious occasion of your party's centenary celebration, October 30, 2020. Through thick and thin, the Communist Party of Australia has a consistent history of fidelity of the working class and the struggle for fundamental change and for socialism in Australia and internationally. Yours is the history of working class struggle in Australia. A small party in an advanced capitalist country, the CPA has been subject of unrelenting attacks by imperialism and by the capitalist state and the media in Australia. Despite this, the CPA has held firm in its adherence to the revolutionary theory and practice of Marxism-Leninism and working class internationalism. Though we are almost exactly on the other side of the planet, our party has strong ties to the CPA through our international work and through our members who travel between our two countries. We take this opportunity to express our appreciation for the principled approach that the CPA has always shown in relations with our party. We salute you and we wish you every success in your ongoing struggles for peace, environmental justice, democracy, equality, and a socialist Australia. The future belongs to the working class. Comradely, Elizabeth Rowley.
Thank you, Comrade Elizabeth, and thank you to the Communist Party of Canada for sending that message. Comrades, we got time for one more greeting, and I would like to ask Comrade Zach to read the greeting from the KKE.
Comrade Vinny from the Communist Party of Greece. Dear comrades, the 100 years of the Communist Party of Australia mark the outstanding contribution of the Australian Communists to the organisation of the struggle of the Australian working class for its rights against big capital in conflict with imperialist plans and competitions of the bourgeois classes. The tens of thousands of immigrant workers of Greek descent who have been living and working for decades in your country, contributing to the workers' people's movement, the class struggle, and the historical course of the communist movement in Australia are an additional connecting link for the necessary exchange of experience and conclusions from the historical course of our parties. On the ground of dangerous developments for the peoples, this historical experience highlights that the communists have the obligation to strengthen discussion and substantive examination of serious and complex issues of class struggle, because their intervention in each country, and especially in a powerful capitalist country such as Australia, is a difficult and demanding case. The 100th anniversary of the foundation of your party coincides with serious developments at a global level that are connected with the new deep capitalist crisis and also the COVID-19 pandemic, which acted as a catalyst, accelerating the outbreak of the capitalist crisis in the midst of the sharpening of the competitions between imperialist centers and bourgeois classes. With these thoughts, we would like to convey to you the wishes of the Greek communists for the 100 years of the Communist Party of Australia. Signed, the International Relations Section of the Central Committee of the KKE.
Thank you, Comrade Zach, for reading that greeting. And comrades, programs always run behind. Not too bad. We haven't done too badly, really. We got a report from Facebook. About 30 people sharing the watch party, they call it, through different platforms. There were some people that couldn't actually join, and I don't know why. I'm not very literate on technology. But yes, they try, they send messages, and unfortunately we can't or couldn't help them to join us. But they're watching there through Facebook and other platforms. And once this recording is finalized, we will upload this to the CPA YouTube so people can watch it again. People have been asking for an opportunity to say a few words, and I've got the comrade Daniel Gaspari, a diplomat from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the embassy in Canberra. We have been working closely together with Daniel in developing practical solidarity for Venezuela. And I think that it is important to hear the message that Comrade Daniel got for us today. Comrade Daniel, if you're can you please take the floor?
Thank you, Vinny. Thank you, all comrades, for this opportunity to talk to you today. It's a great honor to be with you today. On behalf of the people, the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, which I'm honored to represent in Australia and the Pacific, and of course my own, I have the honor to congratulate all you comrades of the Communist Party of Australia on the occasion of the commemoration of its centenary. I would like to take the opportunity to express my sincerest desires for the well-being of the party, all the activists, especially during these hard times where the pandemics of COVID and capitalism is affecting many people around the world. We acknowledge the work of the CPA for the work done in order to defend the workers' rights and the sovereignty of the peoples, always struggling for a better world. I firmly believe that we will continue to work successfully together to maintain and strengthen the relations between the CPA and Venezuela. To all of you, thousands of hugs to you, all the best, comrades, and please continue struggling. Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you, Daniel, for your words, and we will continue to develop further the solidarity work in Australia with the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. We also have Comrade Ariel Rodriguez from the Embassy of Cuba. I don't know if he would like to say a few words. Our party comrades are heavily involved in Cuban solidarity through the Australia-Cuba Friendship Societies in most capital cities. In particular in Perth and Sydney, there are rallies outside the US consulates against the US blockade on Cuba every month. So we recently were involved in a solidarity campaign, and we have been involved for quite some time promoting the Cuban Brigade, but demanding that this criminal blockade must be lifted. In his intervention, the comrade from the Communist Party of Cuba mentioned about our support for the Nobel Peace Prize for the Cuban Brigade, the Henry Reeve. Our paper carried a very interesting poster in support of the nomination, and we hope that 2021, the recognition, international recognition of the sacrifice of the Cuban doctors will be recognized with the Nobel Peace Prize. So if Comrade Ariel wants to say a few words, you can do it now. So, let's see. Entonces, well, Comrade Ariel is busy at the moment. If anyone else want to say a few words, please indicate. So what I suggest, I was talking to our co-host here with Zach. Some people miss the video. We can play the video and we will finish with a few final remarks in the Internationale, where we will invite people to clench the fist so we can take a photo of those participants. So Comrade Zach, if you're ready there with the video, let's play the video.
Arise, ye workers, from your slumbers. Arise, ye prisoners of want. For reason in revolt and thunders, and at last ends the age of Kant. Now away with all your superstitions, stubborn masses, arise, arise. We'll change what's both the old conditions, and scholar just to win the prize. Then comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International, united and brave. Then comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International unites the human race. We peasants, artisans, and others, enroll among the sons of toil. We'll claim henceforth the earth as brothers, drive the income from the soil. On our flesh too long has been the raven, we've too long been the vulture's prey. But now, fellows, the spirit is raven, the dawn brings in a brighter day. Then comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International unites the human race. Then comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The International unites the human race. A savior from one mighty river, the trust that we in Prince of Peace.
We came away with an arraignment. Well, then on the 1st of May 1946, we had to wait till the war was over. Then they'd all come out on strike, and they'd stay on strike until they got the conditions they wanted.
And
House, Sydney headquarters of the Australian Communist Party, scene of a dramatic raid by officers of the Commonwealth Investigation Service. Workers in the 5-story building are taken by surprise as 24 Commonwealth police begin the raid, which is authorised by the Attorney General, Dr. Event.
The police raid on the Sydney headquarters of the Communist Party aimed to find stashes of cash. The police failed to find any money, but took the opportunity to remove huge quantities of Communist Party documents.
The long arm of the law reaches into the Communist headquarters and may unearth sensational discoveries.
Well, hey-ho, you landlubbers, here's a tale of a ship of shame. A leaky tub that's manned by slaves, and the bucket of rust is her name. Bucket of rust is her name. The flag of convenience she flies, the Jolly Roger of today, with laundered money, contraband, and drugs, and a crew that gets no pay. Crew that gets no pay. Bucket of rust is a grimy old heap, it's a wonder she can float. And if she sinks, you can't escape, you can't launch the safety boat. Launch the safety boat. Hey, your rhinos are full of slime and scum, but what's even worse than that is a rancid food in the galley must be shared with the roach and rat. Gotta share it with the roach and the rat. Well, a bucket of rust is a great success. She's welcome in our ports. She undercuts our local ships with her cheapness and her rods. Cheapness and her rods. Deregulated industry is her blood, her lifeline. You can be substandard and be a sweatshop, and the government don't mind. No, the government don't mind. Sad to say, the bucket of rust, could this have been God's will? On the Great Barrier Reef she ran aground with 2 crew members killed. 2 crew members killed. And it took them 12 days to blast her away and free her from the reef. And all through the time, the oil she spilled, it brought the sea to grief. You know, it brought the sea to grief. It's hard to believe, but this story ends well for this great heap of shit. Minister for Transport saved the day when he issued a new permit. John Anderson is his name. It's a true story. My face, scatter my rights all over the place, and take the bread from off my plate, but you can't break me. Lock me out, chain the gates, put black shirts in with dogs and mace. I'll hold the line, won't step away, 'cause you can't break me. I belong, you belong, we belong to the union. Don't count me out when I'm on the floor. We'll win again, we've won before. The streets will ring with a mighty roar, 'cause you can't break me. Stocks rise up on workers' backs, profits soar while you hand out the sack. Boardroom bullies bloated and fat, but you can't break me.
Australia's sold to mates offshore, backroom deals and shonky law. This day has come, we say no more. You can't break me. I belong, you belong, we belong to the union. I belong, you belong, we belong to the union. We won't turn away if you dare us to fight. I swear I'll never lay down and die. I'm in the union, mate, got a right to belong. We'll be back, millions strong, women and men united as one. 'Cause you can't break me. There's a warning here to the men in grey. The piper's come, it's time to pay. We're taking back what you stole away. 'Cause you can't break me. I belong, you belong, we belong to the union. I belong, you belong, we belong to the union.
Great. Now it did work. So, comrades, some final remarks. I was thinking about all the contributions which we thanked, and we thank everybody who joined us and made the effort. And it's a celebration that we must have. How can we fix this planet? The role of communists, the objective conditions 100 years ago. In our case, 26 delegates in Sydney Town Hall, or the Sydney Trace Hall, sorry, with men and women, decided the necessity to form a working class party. The inspiration of the great October Socialist Revolution, which demonstrated that change is possible. Working class power can be won, and it will be won. Socialism can be a reality. It has been demonstrated by the other countries that it building socialism with their own characteristics. We need socialism if we want to save the planet. We want to save the environment. If we want a better living for all. And communists must exercise the right to govern. In our case, we need more members in this party. Recruitment will play a very important role in the years to come, to have a party that can be more influential. Education. Education in recent years have played an important role with our national schools, the training on new cadre. Because sometimes we can set up new branches, but we don't have the trained cadre to lead those branches. So we need to pay attention to education and training. More disciplined is essential for a party with a vertical structure where discipline is essential, so we can act as one with the democratic centralism, with a united leadership of our party. I thank all members of the Central Committee that today have joined us, and for the wisdom and the ability to lead the party. The necessity that every member of the party become an activist. That is something that we need to put in practice. Take to the streets and sell our weekly paper. Regardless of the position that we have in the party, we must do this. The need to contribute financially to the party. Finance is an issue. We can't make revolution without money. And the revolution is funded by the people. And currently our party, all the necessities that the party has to invest for the party activity is paid for by members. we don't get subsidies from anywhere. So members are contributing, are pledging, and we need to be more disciplined on our pledges to be able to be more effective in our struggle. And when we have more activity, when we have more and more new members that will contribute to the issue of the finances. In the past, many comrades have left bequests to our party. But today, the reality is that young people can't afford a home, can't buy, they can't live, don't have enough jobs on a secure income. So we need to look at other sources of income. For this centenary, we produce a limited edition badge waiting on this side. We encourage everybody to get the badge, to help the branches with the funds. We produce a centenary pen, a bag, so people can carry the guardians when they go and sell on the streets. All of this is available from our national office. We decided to spend $100,000 in capital expenses on our national office. We went to take the decision to put solar panels, not just because we're going to save on our bills, but also because it's a contribution to reduce our footprint. We have a conditioners that way our comrades now can work in a more humane way by producing the paper. So I thanked the comrades from the Guardian Collective because week after week they're producing our newspaper that put us on the street every year. But they call on all branches to become centers of political activity. That means discussions in our branches. Talk and reflect about what the working class need. And if it is good for the working class, it's good for all. And our interests are not different to those of the working class. For those that we work in unions, we need to be able to have more influence, to be trade unionist plus, to be able to win more to our ideas. And with these words, I would like to invite all to join us to listen to the Internationale. And if you are able, turn your videos on and show your face. Venceremos. Thank you very much. And thank you for attending. Socialism is the future. Thank you, comrades. Venceremos. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, Comrade Feeney.
Thank you, Comrade Sack. Well done.
Thanks, comrades. All the best.
All the very best, comrades.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
All the very
Thank you,
best.
Vinny.
And I want to congratulate.
I hope to see you next time.
Thank you, comrades. All the best.
Well done.
Have a good evening, everyone. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bye, Vinny. Bye-bye.
When is the next meeting? Could you tell us the next meeting?
Comradely, greetings to all from Richard in WA, in home quarantine. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Where's the next meeting? Still nobody answer me.
The next meeting depends where you live.
All right.
Yes, there are meetings. In which city are you in?